Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Cloud Factory Supply Chain Fundamentals 2022 series. It's a very exciting day for us, Ross, as we launch this series. So my name is Franz Munich. I'll be your host today. I'm the Solution Sales Director at Cloud Factory. And joining me today, we have Ross Gilchrist, our Managing Director. So Ross, very well known in our industry as an expert leader and in business management solutions. He's also very well known for driving best practice, process improvements, and automation. We're very excited to launch the series. It's going to be a series of concise 1-hour sessions, and we're going to look to unpack a very relevant topic in supply chain issues and concerns. So let's have a look at that, at the supply chain issues overview there. Thank you, Ross. So the world is, I would say, basically had a paradigm shift, and demand and supply are forever altered. Customers and suppliers alike have new expectations, and all the while we work in an environment which is beset by supply chain issues. Now, customers still expect the goods at the end of the day, and they want it on time, and customers have changed how they buy. All those expectations have changed. And phrases like the new normal are quite commonplace. Companies need to be able to adapt rapidly to everything thrown at them, from pandemics to fire, and of course, more recently, we've seen a lot of floods. Everything impacts the supply chain. Well, some of these issues are going to have a short-term impact. Others will forever change the way we do things. Now, in order to survive and thrive, companies will need best practice strategies and solutions, which is why we're here today. Let's have a quick look at the entire series. So in this series, we're going to unpack relevant topics on a monthly basis. I'm sure you would agree that there's some fantastic topics on the screen there. We're definitely interested to attend the sessions. We're going to have some industry experts as well. So it's not just us you're going to be talking to. And so we have those guest speakers. But let's just have a look at some of those topics there. I mean, we're going to talk about next month, 2022 and beyond. Well, today we're covering key challenges. We're looking at insight to actions. We're going to talk about omni-channel freight management, manufacturing, how you optimize the warehouse. You can see the list there and look at some of those agenda items in there. Very interesting topics, and we trust it's going to be a journey that you follow through with us, where as we go from topic to topic, and we bring relevant and current discussion points. We feel that the year is going to be very fluid, that things are going to change on a monthly basis. And so we've spread out our series over the year in short, concise pieces. Let's have a look at some quick housekeeping there. So we have a page on LinkedIn. We'd love you to follow it. QR code, you know what to do with that, scan it, and simply tick the follow us. We're also going to be conducting some polls today. That means we're going to ask you some questions we'd love you to respond to. It helps us to see what everyone in the audience is feeling. It also helps to keep everyone involved. And then as you exit the session today, you will be redirected to a survey. Love you to answer the survey. Love to get your input. We'd be interested to know what you found interesting in the session. It's very short. Please answer it. Give us some feedback so that we can improve. You will also see a handout in your control panel, which you can download as you follow the session today. Let's have a quick look at today's agenda. So in today's session, we're going to, after the introduction, we're going to have a look at some key challenges which we're facing in supply chain today. Of course, every challenge has a business impact. Ross is going to unpack that. And then we're going to look at how we plan for success in this environment we found ourselves in, and have a look at some best practice solutions. I want to give you a quick introduction to who we are as Cloud Factory. So we're celebrating 30 years this year. That's a great milestone. We're very proud of that. We have long-standing customers, more than 20 years in some cases. We're very passionate for our customers, and we're extremely well experienced and tenured consultants. So not only passionate for our customers, we're also passionate for great projects, successful projects. Now, today we're not discussing solutions, but we do in fact implement solutions from MYOB, Microsoft, Wise, SAP, and Corba. These solutions, primarily business management solutions, aimed at the SMB market. We have some specializations around warehouse management in Corba, and we also look at dynamic sales and so on, dynamic field service through dynamic CRM. When we choose solutions, we look for solutions that are easy to configure, that are easy to update. We're not looking to redevelop everything. That's not how things are done nowadays. So we look for very customizable, very configurable solutions, and we're very happy with the portfolio that we present to our customers. So that's enough from me. It's probably time to hand you over to Ross. And so without further delay, I will hand you over to Ross Gilchrist, Managing Director for Cloud Factory. Thank you, Ross.
Thanks, Franz. That was a great intro. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to have everyone on the session today as we kick off supply chain fundamentals for the year. I thought it would be good to start the journey today and have a look at some high-level key pressures and impacts that we see lots of businesses that we engage with have, across the whole supply chain, and hopefully that will sort of frame the rest of today's session, but also the whole series in terms of all the topics that Franz just sort of went through at a high level there. I'm sure a lot of the pain points and concerns on screen will resonate, and we're going to unpack some key specific ones, I guess, today, and really see how we can address, minimize, and help businesses sort of overcome some of these impacts. And indeed, leading up to the session today, there's even some things that have been added in the last couple of weeks, which kind of shows the sort of fast-moving global environment we're all sort of faced at the moment and in the world. So I guess so ranging from, I guess, demanding expectations from customers around delivery, omni-channel, various other things, and how we control inventory performance to meet that sort of demand, all the way through to loads of things that the audience will have experienced, whether it's global labor shortages, obviously the pandemic's in there. We talk about macro around inflation, interest rates, the war with fuel costs, and obviously restricting moving the goods, and even as Franz mentioned, the local weather events, which everything has an impact, and companies have to absorb and try and work through in today's environment. And really, so there's a lot of topics on there, and that's what the series is about. How do we tackle them head on, and how do we provide options, solutions to businesses? So lots on there, but we're going to pick up on just some key challenges, I think, today, some key ones that we see as very topical and certainly have an impact out there, from planning and visibility through to things like freight costs and delivery times, and both shipping and even manufacturing delays. And I think to sum up before we start to unpack further, shortage is definitely a word that we're going to define and see a lot of in the coming year. Even the news every day, so it's showing the cold shelves and all of the above it, but it's across the whole supply chain. And so supply chain resources, goods, staff are really going to remain contracted, we believe, for certainly the next 12 months and beyond, but consumer demand is still going up. So how do we find that balance to supply and demand? And then we're going to talk a little bit about a thing that's close to my heart in terms of sustainability. But I really, before we unpack deeper, I really like the fact that I'm sure the audience would know who Shopify is in terms of an e-commerce platform, and that big snazzy front end to e-commerce. But it was great from their managing director to really talk about supply chain as not the sexiest part of retail, but it is the most important. And I thought it's a great quote, because it's truly what we believe in all the businesses we talk to, whether it's e-commerce, business to business, whatever they are, supply chain is the core to make sure you get right. So let's unpack a bit further in terms of each one. As I say, this is about sort of introing a lot of these concepts that are really going to be unpacked deeper throughout the whole year in the series in detail. But I guess something that I believe is the number one issue and challenge for all companies, or certainly most companies, regardless of industry, is visibility, and visibility across the organization. Really understanding all corners of the business, having information to hand to drive real-time insights to action is so important, and actually not really achieved to lots of businesses out there. So I wanted to reference a recent Gartner study on screen here, which really put that in place around lack of visibility across the supply chain, with, yeah, I guess it came third in what they were viewing out there, and I'm surprised it was third and not first. But if we look at the ones previous to it and we talk cost management, obviously it's key to any business to do cost management, and the hiring aspect, which is maybe a short-term scenario around labour shortages. But I would argue that lack of visibility is a problem for the first two as well. You know, how can I do cost management without visibility across my organisation? So visibility, I think, is linked to just about everything on the list here, and so I think it's key to understand that. And what we're also going to unpack throughout the series is just that coordination, which ties into visibility of that end-to-end supply chain process. How do we control? How do we have both ends in sync, for want of a better word? So before we move on from visibility, there's another good, I guess, sort of stat or a bit of research that probably puts this to mind, that according to McKinsey, who's another sort of global sort of research firm along with the likes of Gartner and stuff, said that 73% of companies still rely on manual methods like spreadsheets to monitor and plan for supply chain risks. And again, if maybe you in the audience, maybe not, but really is a core challenge that really businesses should have as a high focus on how they achieve success. And we'll talk about that a bit later. So we want to unpack a little bit, I guess, of challenges in supply chain and freight. You know, both cost and delays. I'm sure it's probably pretty familiar. We've already talked about it a couple of times, and you only need to switch on the news around some of these freight challenges. But if we unpack it a little bit more, again, not to state the obvious, because it's anybody in the supply chain knows, but even to put it in perspective, the average cost of shipping a standard 40-foot container, I guess, has now surpassed $10,000. I mean, the study's in US, but obviously you can work that through in AUD, 4 times higher than a year ago, which is phenomenal. And we're going to talk through some of these elements as we look to the plan success piece later on, but that's a key challenge for anybody, particularly in Australia, where you're large importing from overseas, and those freight costs are really a large part of getting goods on shore and into our warehouses and out to customers, but also delays. I can quite find a port statistics in Australia, but the same thing resonates worldwide. You know, average of 24% increase into ports and shipping ports around the world. We've all seen the news of the containers out and in the waters waiting to get in, and it's just a complete backlog and bottleneck of goods getting into countries. And I guess a lot of that is drawn around from whether it's some of it's panic buying. You know, we won't talk toilet rolls because we're way beyond that now. I'm conscious of talking about pandemics or anything, but panic buying, both consumer and also supplier, you know, both sides of the supply chain, just trying to get goods in to really have that, you know, on hand and in country to be able to work with. And again, I guess everybody's just been that nervous way of, can we get stock? How do we do it? And born around, I guess, is part of that accelerated online shopping that we've really seen in the last, coming up for 2 years now. So it really is one of the key challenges we see around freight across the supply chain. I guess linked to that to an extent is linking freight and then delivery at the other end, I guess, of the supply chain, and the expectations of customers today. And we're all one of them, I guess. We serve both arms of that supply chain. So customers' expectation around that fast, free, on-time delivery, you know, born about from I guess Amazon started, and now through the last couple of years has really expanded and become quite a norm in terms of expectation when you go online. And I guess the some of this on screen here is very, I guess, retailer, business to consumer focused, but there's still elements, whether you're a distributor out to business, that expectation level has certainly increased over the last year, certainly. And so, estimate delivery times are a top thing that consumers look for in terms of purchasing. If we put that in perspective, again, just to, we resonate and bring our views to the local market, but this is born behind sort of global research as well. So again, McKinsey again said that 75% of apparel and durable goods, specialty resellers, etc., are all planning to have that sort of 2-day or faster, and indeed 42% are looking for same-day delivery. So that, along with things like, again, a Shopify study, it says that consumers are want everything yesterday. Isn't it always the way? And so I think all arms of your customer to the consumer to distributors all have a heightened expectation of turnaround times, and that's a challenge. Will that stay the norm forever? I guess time will tell. But I wonder whether at some point, and I fall into one of these, I guess, is I wonder whether we fall back to less about tomorrow stroke yesterday and more about dependable times, transparency, and good customer service. So, I think we've all probably had the things coming to the door, every day or every second day. I buy something from one of the retailers and I get boxes every day, and it might come, it might not, they might have swapped it out. And I, for one, would rather that the supply chain gets back to producing dependable times rather than just that high expectation. Will that happen? I'm not sure, but I do believe that something will fall back maybe to the norm at some point in time, or not. But either way, one of the things that's really important for us in the supply chain, everybody's talking about that last mile, and whether it's Amazon, TNT, doesn't matter who it is, coming and delivering to you. It's really, for us on this series, talking about not to forget the middle mile, as I would call it. In other words, how do we make sure as a business or a distributor that we've got the right stock in the right location to help that last mile, that we're going to join up to, whether it's a freight forward or whether it's our own last mile option. And we're going to talk about last miles later on in the series, but really let's concentrate on making sure that we know when we're getting goods, the levels we have, and where we need to put them, to make sure we whether you've got a distribution center in different states, do you have the right levels based on the demand coming from consumers? That becomes, to our end, very important. And if I can join the challenges, and we're going to talk about this a bit later, how do you know that without visibility? So how do you know where to put things without really understanding what's going on within your environment, within the supply chain? So delivery and delivery expectations we see is that as a huge challenge out there. And again, maybe this is probably not at the forefront of maybe a lot of the audience, maybe today, maybe it is, but it's certainly something that I think we'll see in the years ahead, and something that I wanted to bring to the table, quite passionate about in terms of the longer term view of social environment sustainability. But actually, it was interesting, again, a good study that I wasn't aware it had moved so quick around that increase. In the last 6 years, 71% increase in online searches for sustainable goods, or 44% of customers choosing to buy brands with commitment to sustainability. So it's happening. We all know about the environment. We all know the big companies are talking about zero carbon and carbon offsets, all that stuff, which is not for today, but really it is talking about the next decade, or thinking about that. I'm sure companies in the audience are thinking about it, and so there's a lot of companies that are going to bring that to the table, because I think it's going to be more important in terms of consumers and brand awareness over the next decade. So even the top one there around allowing customers to easily recycle products, that's quite common. It's a product in terms of talking about recyclable products, packaging particularly, I guess on everybody in the supply chain, trying to get away from all that plastic, etc. And so how how do you do that, and how do you optimize that level? So again, maybe not a huge part of our series, but I think certainly it's going to be an interesting dynamic and topic for the years ahead. And so wanted to bring that, I think, as a key challenge for some big companies today, but put it on the table for people to start thinking about for tomorrow. Okay, so it's not all about challenges. We will get beyond that and start talking about some positive. It sounded a negative way to reach out to the series, but I think really important because it frames where we're going to try and take it, Franz. And I think take a pause and maybe ask the audience what they think of that before we move on.
Yeah, totally. And that's why we're here. So we'd love to hear from you. We'll put up a quick poll and just ask you to respond. It's multi-choice. And the question is pretty easy. What are your most relevant pain points? And these are the ones Ross was talking about now. Is it visibility and planning? Is it freight concerns, delivery expectations? Is sustainability one of your key concerns, or labor and skill shortages? So I'd love you to weigh in on that. It's multi-select. Ross, do you think everyone's just going to tick everything and then it's going to be like 100% of everything?
Well, I mean, it may be, Franz. Certainly within Australia, it's very hard to get away from freight and delivery concerns. I guess delivery
Mm,
expectations maybe not for business to business, depending on the business model. So,
sure.
I would think if there's people on the audience that don't tick any, then I'd be surprised because
Mm,
it's very, very hard to not have one of those issues, at least in the supply chain, I fancy.
definitely relevant right now.
Mm,
All right, let's have a look at those results and see what everyone voted in on. So the results of visibility and planning, 100%. It's multi-select, so not it doesn't add up to 100, right?
mm,
Freight concerns, 67% of the audience having a pain point with delivery expectations, 100% of the audience. Sustainability, 33%.
mm,
Labor and
mm.
skill shortages, 33%. So I think that's, what do you think, Ross? That's
I think it's
pretty
reflective.
consistent. Mm,
Yeah, and it's good to know that I guess we have people in the room that we can talk to about these challenges. The
mm.
worst thing is if everybody said nothing is impacting them, then we'd have a challenge. No, but in all
Really.
seriousness, I think that's a fair reflection of a lot of
Mm,
the organisations we engage with. Yeah.
totally. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, what I think we'll do is we'll then take if we think about that, we'll take those key challenges and there's no, it's not like there's a silver bullet to a lot of these, but how do we plan for success around how we tackle them and how we look to put best practice in place to help across the supply chain. And so we want to talk about what we believe sort of the three main pillars, I guess, to success across a supply chain strategy. How do you put a successful supply chain strategy together? And it's through these key pillars. Visibility, again, I probably said that word too many times in one presentation, but I can't stress enough that I think it's one of the key aspects to make sure you have or the supply chain falls down. And then we're going to talk about resilience, agility, and what that actually means for organizations going forward. Again, with the time we've got today, this is sort of that high level, that building block for future parts of the series to really start to then dig deeper, because it's a complex complex area that needs unpacking in different levels. But if we keep going and we start to talk about visibility, I do like this quote because it seems obvious, but then you put it up as we can't manage what we can't see. We can't plan for what we don't know. And we can't execute if we're not aligned across the supply chain. In other words, it seems obvious, and hopefully it resonates out there, that if we don't have that visibility, we're really going to struggle. And so, I guess to now take that a little bit deeper, and I guess we got 100%, I think, on the poll. So we have the audience that resonates with us on that. Is visibility is key across the whole supply chain. All areas are linked. Yeah, so to find that right balance between supply, demand, operational efficiency, customer service, you kind of need deep insights across everything. You need to understand what's happening over on procurement. You need to understand about what's going on with your customers before I can even think about how I do any demand planning or inventory planning or even operational around labor. So I think this whole real-time insights to allow accurate and timely decisions is fundamental to any, I guess, plan for moving forward in the supply chain. And I guess from there, and again, just probably dripping in things for future series, we've got that sort of real-time insight, data analytics, and all the stuff that you get within modern platforms. But then if you layer in modern technology around artificial intelligence, machine learning, you're really starting to use this modern technology on top of core platforms that are going to drive these large and some very complex data sets to take a lot of that manual workload away from users and allow them just to spend the time on decisions rather than churning the data. And so that becomes part of core strategy. A big topic, visibility, and I think on our third series we're really going to unpack that whole visibility insight to action layer, Franz, I believe, but certainly very key for us. If we move to the next pillar, just to introduce, is around this sort of resilience level of supply chain. And again, really great sort of stats to support, I guess, our view and our discussion with you guys today. We look at 93% on a study again from McKinsey. We kind of like to use these global leaders because they do some really deep research across industry sets and in this instance supply chain. So 93% plan to increase resilience across supply chain, and let's define resilience. We're going to talk about it on the slide and a couple more, but I really like to unpack things a bit deeper. You'll see on screen, so I'm not going to read it, but it's all about making sure you got options, making sure that you're not sort of on a limb with one plan to get goods. Yeah, that and the challenge around what we've talked about with those challenges. Can I get them? How long is it going to take to get me? So resilience is key on that. Things like the dual sourcing aspects. But I'd like to unpack that a little bit in the next slide. But really being able to put that structure in place, and then really starting to look at 54% say expect changes to the supply chain planning after COVID. Well, again, that's that visibility there. That's that making sure you've got that information to plan forward, make sure you've got that real insight to action so that you can move forward with a plan. And the plan is real and the plan is accurate as you can be in a moving world of all the areas that we talked about. And again, 90% plan to increase digital supply chain talent in-house. Well, we talked about the labour shortage, but a lot of people are looking to that reskill function. Can you take people that are there at the moment, really get them cross-trained and all of the above? Okay. And yes, we know that there's budget constraints in transforming there. I guess that 11%, but that's quite low. The rest are really seeing that you embrace it. I mean, there's a I guess there's that thought of budget constraint, but you've got to kind of look at that, the return on the investment as well. Budgeting's one thing, but if you really look to that analytics aspect of what you could achieve if you've got this groundwork in place, then I think it's pretty obvious that it pays for itself and then some. Not just in terms of the increased revenue, reduced cost stuff, but even competitive edge, and that's so important for lots of organizations out there. So if we just unpack that, I guess it was on that previous screen, but just took out a couple of examples that really, I guess, resonate maybe more locally in Australia. So we get this concept of just in case versus just in time, and there's this new terms out in the market for years in supply chain solutions. They would talk about just in time inventory, JIT, basically being able to try and optimize having your goods in the warehouse for the minimal amount of time, even to the point of if people can drop ship where you've got a truck waiting on the delivery coming in and the shipment going out. very hard to do in a lot of industries, but can be achieved. But this just in case is that resilient aspect. And what does that mean? Well, it could be that based on that next point of increasing service level inventory in key products, i.e., almost to the point of being overstocked. Yeah, you need to, so service level inventory, or there's lots of deep formulas and algorithms that you can Google on how all that works. But effectively, you're working through the analytics of the movement of stock and the levels, not just simple mins, maxes and stuff like that, but an algorithmic approach to see what's the key stock level around certain pieces of inventory, and just in case is maybe having that buffer or safety levels above what you would typically or traditionally do, to make sure that you don't run out of critical stock. And it was on the previous slide as well, but I really think that multi-sourcing and near sourcing, and it's an interesting thing within Australia. Multi-sourcing, a lot of goods obviously import from Southeast Asia and all of the above, and so multi-sourcing, might not bring that much benefit to getting it out of one supplier in China or another in China or Thailand or wherever. But near sourcing is an interesting concept, and so obviously the term near sourcing is maybe we can get it from a supplier closer. Now we know we're probably going to have to pay more cost. Yeah, that's the whole point of getting it in from overseas in the first place. But if we start to throw in a fourfold increase in freight cost versus the near sourcing or the overseas sourcing, working out the analytics to see what actually difference does that mean nowadays. And so it just provides that option or resilience, coming back to the term, to the supply chain that says maybe it's not all about low cost from overseas. Maybe we should look to have a plan B, and that's really what it's about. Again, we talk about, we look after a lot of manufacturers across our base, and lots of people are still manufacturing within Australia, but as we know, a lot of it is outsourced, maybe again overseas, and so maybe there's options to provide resilience, to look at maybe not doing the manufacture. Maybe you can contract or subcontract part of it, or indeed, and it's certainly a conversation myself and Franz have had a few times around the coming back to Australia. Will manufacturing come back onshore in a bigger way going forward? Time will tell, but we do see that happening across the industry base. A lot of it's on specialist manufacturing and not just the large discrete runs that you can typically get more cost effective overseas. But it's going to be one of those things that I'm sure industries will now start to think about. I'm not sure we'll see the whole car industry coming back in at this point, but hopefully, yeah, I'm not going to the other extreme here because it really won't be that way. But it is an interesting dynamic to sort of look at that. And again, it comes back to that visibility piece so that we can start to really make the correct decisions around resilience. And I guess that I touched on it there around sort of that cost price analysis and insight being key to that is, a really big thing that a lot of companies we speak to out there, just again, we're not making it a systems approach, but systems is relevant, and we'll get to that, is that they struggle with this concept of how much cost it get for each individual widget, for want of a better word, to get in country, and we call that landed costs. So, whether it's freight, customs, insurance, all these added costs, and we're paying in foreign currency. So if we think about large volatility in foreign currency, we talk about the freight costs that we've already mentioned, several times now, going through the roof. And we're talking about that added cost. How do I take that big chunk of cost and spread that so that I know the exact in-warehouse cost of my product? And that's the concept of landed costs, and built into systems will then give you that accurate in-warehouse cost. And really that's key, because if you're not looking at adding that on, then you're maybe seeing margin erosion that maybe you don't have as close a handle on. So I'm not saying to the audience that you definitely don't know what margins you're making and all of the above, but that's that visibility there to when things are volatile, things can move so quickly that if you're not keeping, I guess, abreast of that, then pricing starts to really not be as dynamic, and all it's doing is maybe you're getting some serious margin erosion going on there. So I guess the summary of of that on the last bullet point before we move on is that whole sort of balancing act of resilience over efficiency. Yeah, we want to be as efficient as possible, and that's that whole just-in-time modeling and all of the above. But as we see the last 2 years, maybe there's this balance, and you need to find that balance. And I guess that's really what resilience means across the supply chain operation. I mean, there's loads of stats on the right here. I'm sure the audience have already read it. It's all about how do we try and achieve those improvements? How do we try and make sure that we are covered? So the last sort of pillar, or the last of the three key pillars that we see is around that agile or agility in terms of approach to supply chain. And I guess the first one on the list is nothing more obvious to state out loud as we went through working from home or working remotely for the last coming up for 2 years largely. I mean, we got out and then we got back in kind of thing. But if we just talk about that, is having that systems structural layer and solution in place to allow businesses and organizations to continue as unaffected as possible. Now, when we're in supply chain, people need to move things around a warehouse, so it's not like the whole organization can go remote workforce, but there is elements to make sure that modern solutions are in place to allow that remote access, that remote collaboration to happen across that supply chain. Again, come back to visibility, sales still talking to inventory still talking to procurement, and all throughout that, customer service and everybody. So remote workforce management, key to an agile approach going forward. That ability to start looking at automation across the supply chain, and again, it's a big topic that we certainly will unpack throughout the sessions. But also, and it was actually on a previous slide, can we cross skill? Can we start to be agile with our labour? That we've got one person doing one thing, but can we cross skill and have that multiple approach? And that gives us agility for anything that we don't know is coming next. We're better placed with the labour we have. Obviously, the example is that there's a shortage and it's very hard to get skills, but not just that. It's really about how can we utilise the labour as best we can. And I've got a quick example of that as well. But even, agility being rapid upscaling, downscaling, what does that mean? It's not easy to do, but even if we talk about our system software, maybe it is, that whole introduction of things like cloud technology where you're actually subscribing as a service and you can upscale, downscale as you need. That's a great example of what we're going to talk about as part of this series now. Lots of other examples on that, but that's obviously a key scenario there. And again, agility, you can't be agile without information. So coming back to that number one pillar as I see it is how do I make decisions without the information to hand, and that's fundamental to the approach. So we're going to go through a lot of the detail of agile approaches in the full series, but today, with the time I had, I picked a couple of examples that we will actually unpack in more detail, but I thought it'd be good for the audience just to sort of get a view from where we're coming at it from. And so, maybe an agile solution in terms of supply chain might be to look at partnerships. And what I mean by that is maybe using a 3PL, or a outsourced warehouse or logistics person for your warehouse, instead of having your own warehouse operation. Yeah. Now, it's quite an obvious one. It's common strategy, particularly for young growth companies that don't have the warehouse. But again, even for an expansion of a mature business that are starting to maybe go into different regions, do they want to actually do their own warehouse operation? And maybe they don't. The rationale, I guess, is on screen. Obviously it drives cost savings or not. I mean, that's a balancing act there, but you don't need to you don't need to skill up. You let them do what they do. You focus on your core competencies, and that scalability, flexibility you get, because you're really, I guess, paying for that as that service approach. So that's a good way of looking at agility by partnership. The problem with that aspect, unless you've got a clear-cut strategy, is that if you you need to join the dots. If you've got systems internally, you're using 3PLs. If you save one, but then you end up in a disjointed approach with a lot of manual process to sync backwards, then you're really not going to gain. It's not going to work, and you're going to fall over in other aspects very quickly. So it's key that you have that overall strategy. If we start to look, I guess, a bit more around technology and platform, and this is something we're really passionate about, is I guess looking, we talked a little bit earlier about artificial intelligence and machine learning on the analytics, but if we look to that over with technology, with a warehouse specific, we start to really look at things like business process automation, robotic process automation, and even these, AMRs is what they're called now, but autonomous mobile robots you'll see on here. I'm sure the audience have all, I guess, seen the Amazon videos of a couple of years ago, and you'll see some great things out there around that whole autonomous view of the warehouse. But we've got, everybody thinks that's the top end and the big end of town, but we've got partners and solutions on within our portfolio that are providing that to market right now. And with any technology that starts to mature, the costs come down and it becomes really available into small and medium enterprises. So for the audience, don't just rule out that that's not an option. I'm not saying it doesn't have a cost, but that cost to provide out there is maybe not as high, and certainly won't be in the years ahead, i.e. the next couple of years, than what you might think. And that really drives agility through the use of technology. Yeah, so it's probably pretty obvious what that would give you in terms of those bullet points. You're going to get enhanced efficiencies. You're going to get, increased capacity without the labor constraint that we talked about, and the productivity, a reduction of errors, and lower costs. And again, it scales and is flexible. But I guess lower costs is what we see is that it might not lower labor, nor would you maybe want it to. It means that you can move your labor more from a repetitive scenario of doing this manual work, and really taking that and putting the MRs in place and let them do high value tasks. And that becomes the importance of using technology around, I guess, supply chain, not just from an agile point of view, but just in general. And just to highlight that, I really love this slide. We present this a lot because it makes sense. If you look at all throughout the last, whatever it is, 50, 60, 70 years, we're talking about increased automation as we move up the technology curve. And really what we're talking about there as we get to this intelligent enterprises is the ability to take users' repetitive tasks away, and that becomes key. As I said on the last slide, if we can take a lot of repetitive manual tasks away from the warehouse and across the whole supply chain, it's not about just taking the labor away. We can really put them to work on high value tasks, and really that's where you get that productivity through the roof in terms of having platforms in place that can automate and allow the staff and the labor to really drive successfully into organizations. So that becomes, I guess, a summary of that approach to technology and process. So I think if we summarize, I guess, these pillars, as I say, I probably went in depth, and we're really going to unpack that, but they are so key. A great study, or a great way to show that on screen with this graph is a disruption event, and we could take COVID as a disruption event, an unfamiliar risk event that happens in your organization. And so if you look at an organization that sort of has, you can't have a plan because it wouldn't be a disruption event. You don't know it's coming. But if you've got visibility and you've got a strong plan, resilience, and you have both as an organization, the people and the systems to be agile, then when something happens, whilst you will drop, that's the whole point, you will be able to put a plan in place very quickly, versus an organization that has nothing really in place and waits for the event. They will get back. I'm sure there's companies still that maybe didn't have it over the last 18 months. They're still there. They're still doing very good business. But there would have been a big impact, or a lot bigger impact than an organization that was planned for the unknown event. And so To summarize that through, we do think it is key or essential, I'll go strong with that word, about having a robust backbone, digital backbone for your business that can be agile and provides scale and visibility across the whole organization. And we really achieve that. It's a term, and everybody, the yawns of digital transformation, but that is the truth of it, is really being able to take the organization and wrap a plan. It's not just about throwing software, for want of a better word, at it and it'll all work. It's about having a business plan across a whole organization and transform it digitally. And so that's going to form the series that we talked to ahead around unlocking the supply chain and providing all those efficiencies and through the key pillars that we've talked about around key technologies. So we'll talk cloud, mobile, as we're all working pretty much 24/7 on mobile. We've really talked through analytics, AI, machine learning. Deep learning is the next one, where there's all neural network stuff, but I won't go deep into that, or it'll take me down a rabbit hole. We'll get to that later. I'm sure Franz is going, oh, he loves to listen to me spouting about that, but we will get to it, because I think it's important that we look to the years ahead, and that's what we try and do as a partner out to industry. But then we start to bring that back a little bit, and we start to look at the Internet of Things, certainly a concept that's been there for years now. If we pick it's a very simple example, but I remember at one of our user groups for our customers about 4 or 5 years ago, I remember having a little, I'm sure Fran's are smiling, I've got my camera off, or can't see cameras at the moment, but we had a little Raspberry Pi that was a sensor, and we hooked it up
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, for heat management, and we showed it to all the people, and we had it, if it went over a certain temperature below it, we had it all fully integrated. The power of modern platforms and integration was to pop up on our monitors for the inventory in the service department to see that somebody left the fridge on, fridge open, for example. We look after people in the food distribution world, and somebody leaves something open, the temperature goes, and all of a sudden we have to write off stock. So it's those little things of Internet of Things that we can really start to look at technology. And we've talked about automation, robotics. We're going to really unpack that further. And in the time that I've got, it was more just to, I guess, introduce what are deep concepts that seem very technology driven, but when you pull it back and you overlay it into business process, it really just is about using modern platforms to achieve that next level supply chain, I guess, success. And that's where our planning for success and the view comes from. So this session's not really about the platforms we deliver. We introduced, Franz introduced some of the vendors we work with and partner with to market on these solutions. And we will unpack and get a bit deeper into certain elements as we go down the series. This is more just about an introduction to the audience, so that we can sort of join the dot between the challenges, the plan, and how do we plan for it. Well, we use best of breed solutions. We use modern cloud technology wrapped around the whole organization. So obviously we're concentrating in sort of inventory distribution, purchasing operations, and production stroke MRP on this particular diagram, but really it's about having an end-to-end visible approach. Receivables and payables even built into the supply chain is super important as we see it, and it's really about that visibility. But obviously we've talked about most of the other things around modern platform, optimized for modern technologies, cloud, mobile, and being able to scale. But as well as being able to scale, being open to integrate with almost like the ecosystem, and I'll touch on that just in a second. But really, modern feel, not having to worry about servers or access, it's remote access. It's about how do I get a feel securely being obviously a key element there, into my business. How do I drive end to end around it? Okay. And so lastly, it's important because we some of the systems we had there with our vendors, from whether it's the Microsofts of the world, MYOB on their advanced platforms, SAP in terms of Business One, and Corber, which is a best of breed worldwide full warehouse management system. Is really that's a lot looking to the let's call it the internal supply chain, how the workings of that works. But how then do we integrate with key, whether it's the freight forwarders in a great relationship, people like Tig Freight, they'll come and several of these we will have in our agenda going down in the series to get some of these key solution partners that we work with and how we interact with them to do the internal external supply chain all end to end. Yeah, so whether it is that freight management, we've talked e-commerce, we won't talk about that. We'll talk about inventory optimization with some clients. We'll talk about how we wrap that round. And so over the course of the series, we want to bring some other industry experts, I guess, with different views that we partner with into this conversation to sort of round it out for the audience. So I think we're doing all right for time, but just really some final thoughts for today is what we're trying to say out there is that the supply chain disruption, and there has and continues to be some disruption, and there will be disruption going forward, has forced, or should we think forced, businesses to accelerate and reassess their digital transformation plans. There is a need, clearly, for business operations to accomplish as much as they possibly can a remote and distributed workforce. There is that need for a resilient supply chain. There is that need to have a view of where that is in a very complex global environment that we've tried to touch on over the course of this session. And the key, or a key way to achieve that, is that need to leverage technology, the power of the cloud, and ensure you're set with a system that is agile, secure, robust, and scalable. So our final thoughts are those kind of 4 elements, and hopefully that's resonated throughout the introduction session we have today. I mean, over this series, you're not just going to hear from myself, Franz. We're going to get our great consultancy team and industry experts in across some key topics. We're going to bring in some of the specialist partners that we partner with that I just mentioned on the previous slide. We're actually going to invite some key customers or key customers of ours into this so that we can have some really real world perspective and share that with the audience, so it doesn't just become about Cloud Factory having a view. It's more about what did our customers achieve by working with us on that. And so we feel by having that different viewpoint that over the series and beyond, we hope to share that with you guys as an audience, and for anybody in the audience that think that's relevant for other people, please do invite any other businesses and touch base with us on that. And I think that probably leads to those touch bases for you, Franz.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ross. That was really interesting. I mean, I've seen your slides, but I enjoyed listening to you present that. Good topics. And as we unpack that into the future series, I think we just go deeper, and it's going to be some excellent learning and sharing, and as we look through the rest of the year. So I just invite everyone to, put in your calendar. If it's on your calendar, you're not going to attend it. So please do go ahead and schedule next month's session, 14th of April at midday. So it's an hour at midday. Very easy concept, 14th of April. Love to see you on the next session. And as Ross said, spread the word if you know people who you think this would be interesting to, or you just want to post it on LinkedIn, go for it. Please do that. We did share the QR code before for LinkedIn. This QR code here is more around if you want to contact us, you can just scan the QR code and it will take to our website, so you can fill in some details and just book in some time for us to sit and chat. You're always welcome to contact us directly. There's a phone number. My email address is there. Ross's email address is there. Fransem or rossg@cloudfactory.co, not .com, .co. We'd love to hear from you, even if it's just feedback on the series. Maybe it's to discuss some business challenges, whatever it is. This is a topic that's very passionate for us. I mean, we've seen the world changing around us. It impacts us all every single day. Just when you think all the impacts are done, another one comes along. Yeah, How long will war impact us? We'll see. But for me, the key takeout today, really, Ross, has been around visibility. If you can see it, you can plan around it. And I guess it's how far out your visibility is as well. That gives you the ability to be strategic, I guess. And
Exactly.
yeah. So thank you very much for joining with us today. We finished on time. That's really great.
That
Our
doesn't
next
happen often,
session,
France.
it doesn't happen often. It just shows what you do when you do some planning. Um, our next session is going to be looking at 2022 and beyond. I mean, they're the topics: supply chain digitization, inventory optimization, just in case versus just in time, 3PL collaboration. Now, these are some of the things Ross has touched on today, but these are things we're going to unpack more. I mean, we're having this conversation here. What do you talk about and not talk about so that you don't unpack everything for the next session? But there is so much detail to go through: supply chain sustainability, automation through technology, which is key whenever we talk to prospects, whenever we talk to customers. These are the things that they want to talk about. How do we do more with less? How do we grow without increasing our team? How do we ensure that our processes are executed time and again? We don't have to spend time checking the process was executed because the solution automates that process for us. Good topics. We look forward to discussing and sharing with you in the next session, and wish you a lovely day. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.